Today I'm going to show you a meal that is perfect for when it's ripping hot outside. I like to call it cool food for hot weather because everything is served cold and can be made well ahead of time. So you can do it in the morning before things really heat up outside. We're going to have gazpacho, which in my opinion is the best soup ever invented, topped with some croutons, and we're going to round it out into a meal by making a big cheese board with some Spanish cheeses, some Marcona almonds, a little bit of peppers, and to top it off, a chilled lemon soufflé, which is light and airy. It packs a wallop of a lemon punch, and it sits in the fridge until dessert time. So to get started, we're going to make the croutons for the soup, and making croutons is no big deal. It's just some bread that you cut into smallish pieces. I like leaving the crust on for making croutons for soup, nice and rustic, but if you're making some fancy potage or something, you might want to cut those crusts off. But I think gazpacho is a more rustic, casual kind of soup. So that was 3 pieces of bread. All right, so we're gonna make garlic flavored croutons because they taste lovely on top of gazpacho. And the trick is to let some fresh minced garlic, that's just 1 clove, sit with the olive oil. Tablespoon and a half of olive oil, pinch of salt. You let it sit there for 20 minutes. You're making a fresh garlic oil. And then you strain out the garlic. That way, those garlic pieces don't burn in the oven. Don't need a lot of oil when making croutons. Now we're just gonna toss the bread with that oil, make sure it's nice and evenly coated, onto a rimmed baking sheet, 350-degree oven for about 15 minutes, stirring them obviously so they get nice and evenly toasted. All right, so while those croutons are toasting, it is time to make the gazpacho. All right, so starting with half an onion, this is a sweet onion, so that's a Vidalia or a Walla Walla. We're just gonna cut this as small as we can. So I actually like to cut the onion into quarters, and then you can easily tip it on its side to get multiple angles. And the sweet onion's nice here. It just has a lot less bite than a regular yellow onion. So I'm gonna build the gazpacho right in the serving bowl. So I have a nice big glass bowl here. Now time to chop up the tomatoes. Now you want 1.5 pounds of tomatoes. That's 2 or 3 tomatoes, depending on their size. And obviously the freshness of the tomatoes is key here. The whole point of gazpacho is to highlight the bountiful, fresh vegetables that you find in summer. Now we're gonna slice the tomatoes into about 1/4 inch thick pieces. And to do that, I'm gonna make 1/4 inch thick slices. A good sharp knife is really key here because it cuts through the vegetables, doesn't rip through them. So if you're gonna hand chop gazpacho, which you should do at least once, be sure to sharpen your knife first. All right, into the bowl they go. Using this bench scraper, this is actually, someone said that's not a bench scraper, that's a guillotine, which I kind of agree. I've never found a bench scraper this large since this was given to me. It's actually a chocolate tool, this is. But a bench scraper just makes quick work of moving these prepped vegetables around, getting them off the board and putting them into a bowl. So it's a good tool to have. There are the tomatoes. Now on to the bell peppers. You can use whatever color bell peppers you want. Today we're using red. Looks particularly pretty if you have yellow or even green. I know green has a slightly different flavor than the yellow and the red. It's a little more bitter. Some people like that, some people don't. I think it's delicious, especially in this soup. I think it's nice. But red is a real crowd pleaser. It's a bit sweeter. So to cut a bell pepper, you lop off the top and the bottom. Just gonna pop out the stems. Obviously, I washed all these before. There we go. Then we're gonna cut through the side of each pepper and then cut out the core. Now, just as I said before, for the tomatoes, we're gonna cut this into 1/4 inch dice. And now that I've already sort of flattened the pieces of pepper, it makes real quick work of cutting them into 1/4 inch thick lengths and then chopping that down into 1/4 inch pieces. Into the bowl it goes. Next up, 2 cucumbers. Now, the thing about cucumbers, there are basically 2 cucumbers in most supermarkets. You get those really nice long ones, the European ones. Those have fewer seeds or smaller seeds. They have a more delicate flavor, which a lot of people like. For this soup, however, I really love the stronger flavor of these smaller cucumbers that are usually grown locally, often have a wax coating on them that you want to wash off. They just have a more pungent flavor that is right in this soup. So you've got 2 cucumbers. I'm going to peel one. I'm gonna leave one unpeeled because I like some of that green peel. I like the texture, I like the color, but 2 is just too much. So peel 1 cucumber, leave the peel on the other one. All right, so trimmed off the edges. Now we're gonna take the seeds out, and to do that, you wanna cut the cucumbers in half lengthwise. And then you just use a spoon and you run it down the cucumber and just scrape out the seeds. Now to cut these up again into 1/4 inch pieces, I'll cut them widthwise into half. That just makes these smaller pieces easier to maneuver. Then you slice them into 1/4 inch wide strips, slice them crosswise into pieces. So some gazpacho recipes I've noticed leave the seeds in the cucumbers and slice it up, which is fine. It has a little bit of a bitter flavor, which I don't mind. More importantly, it has a real mushy texture that I do mind. So that's why I take the seeds out. All right, there's the cucumber. Oh, this bowl's getting heavy. All right, into the bowl it goes. Oh, nice. Okay. All right, now the last vegetable to prep, it's barely a vegetable, 2 garlic cloves. You want them raw. I'm gonna use a rasp style grater. That just turns the garlic into a nice puree that will evenly flavor the soup. Okay, you can see all the garlic stuck on that back side. A few whacks to get it out. Now, the trick to making gazpacho, besides using good vegetables and cutting them all to the same size, is you want to let them sit with a little bit of salt, about 2 teaspoons of salt. And that really helps draw out their moisture and their flavor before you add the tomato juice. So we're gonna add some salt, we're gonna add a little vinegar, does the same thing. This is sherry vinegar, classic in a gazpacho. Oh, it has a really nice deep flavor. Sort of an iconic flavor for gazpacho. Gonna add 1/3 cup of that. Last but not least, a little bit of hot sauce. What hot sauce you use is totally up to you. I like Tabasco in this version of gazpacho because the other hot sauces for me all are meant for different foods, but Tabasco is meant for gazpacho in my house. So I like it quite spicy. Recipe calls for a teaspoon. I add at least a teaspoon. So I'll add a teaspoon and then I'll kind of just do this. A little for luck. All right, so we're just gonna let these vegetables sit here for a few minutes till they get nice and glistening. Oh, let that salt and vinegar really start to pull out those juices. Oh, it already smells like gazpacho. Something about the bell peppers, the tomatoes, and the cucumbers, it's a very mild aroma, but with the salt and the sherry vinegar, oh, it smells like summer. All right, so we're just gonna let that sit for a few minutes. Time to check the croutons. Ah, look at those croutons. Perfectly evenly golden. You can't smell it, but it smells just slightly like garlic. Perfect. So I'm gonna set these aside to cool. All right, you can see it doesn't take much time, but you can see all that liquid's really starting to come out of the vegetables. Of course, a little of that's the vinegar, but that's more than the vinegar I put in, I'll tell you that. So, oh, that's a good sign. Now we can finish by adding tomato juice. Now, I've actually tested this with a lot of different tomato juices, and I have found that they all taste great. If you make your own tomato juice, it is out of this world. But I usually just save some time and buy the stuff from the supermarket. That's 5 cups of tomato juice. All right, give it a little taste at this point. See if you like the heat. Of course, we have to add a little pepper. All right, now it needs a little bit of pepper. Ooh, it has a nice kick to it. That kick will mellow over time. All right, so there's one last ingredient in this gazpacho, and that's a few ice cubes. Helps water down that thick tomato juice and also helps it to chill the soup really quickly. So you want to add 8 ice cubes. Now my ice cubes from my refrigerator are tiny, so I'm adding 16 because about 2 of those is the size of a regular cube. All right into the soup they go. All right, so into the fridge this needs to go for at least 4 hours, but up to 2 days. And of course, we're gonna cover it with plastic wrap.
Love our in-depth reviews? Get the latest from our reviews team delivered straight to your inbox. Our well-equipped cook newsletter provides top product picks, no-nonsense buying guides, and must-try recipes. No extra fluff, just the smartest ways to shop, save, and cook. Sign up for free now at americastestkitchen.com/newsletter.
All right, it's time to make the cheese board to go with that gazpacho. It just helps to round out the meal. And of course, you could just throw cheese on a platter, but in this house, cheese boards are a serious business. So what I have here is a nice big piece of slate to display all the cheese and meat. We use all sorts of things in this house. We use big cutting boards. I've seen really rustic pieces of wood. It all looks good, as long as it's a nice big surface. You don't want to start with something too small and you're jamming it all on. So this is a Spanish-inspired cheese board to go with the gazpacho. That means I'm using Spanish meats and cheeses like this Serrano ham. Now you can see it's all nice and folded. I like to make, you can make rosettes. I think sometimes they can look a little fussy. Just little folds that are easy for people to pick up. We're just gonna make kind of a nice swoop through the middle of the board with the ham. That way when you look at the board from any angle, when you approach it, you have kind of easy access to most of the things on the board. So that is the ham. Now for the cheese. All right, so now we're gonna add a little manchego, again, sticking with that theme. And you notice the manchego's already been cut. That just makes it really easy for people to come by and pick a piece up. Next up, some blue cheese. I like having something really mild and creamy like the manchego, that's a crowd pleaser, and something a bit more pungent. Now, sticking with the theme, you could go with a cabrales, which is a Spanish blue, but any sort of creamy blue will do. What I like to do is just start to crumble it up a bit. Make crumbles, get people started. That's nice and creamy. Now to go with the blue cheese, I'm doing some of these pickled peppers. There's lots of different styles of peppers. But these ones, this brand, Juanita Picante, they are my favorite. And I love them when they're stuffed with the blue cheese. Just to really just get that idea out there. When people come to the board, they can have a little fun. They can put whatever they want in these peppers. That's a pretty sit, Ziggy. That's some, that's some good begging. All right, now we're gonna put some membrillo around. Now membrillo is classic Spanish quince paste, has kind of a sweet flavor, tastes wonderful with the blue cheese and the manchego. Notice I already cut it up as well so that people can just grab a piece of membrillo, put it with their cheese. Last but not least, some Marcona almonds. I'm just gonna kind of sprinkle them in and around. Maybe put one into one of the peppers. Oh, that bite is gonna be delicious. And the bread. If you find you don't have a lot of room left, you can just put some bread on the platter. Remind people that it's there, but leave the bowl kind of off to the side. All right, and that is a Davison cheese board. And I'm learning, I'm still getting good at this. As I said, my husband is the cheese board master, and this is what he taught me. Make height, make it kind of a landscape, try to make it easily accessible so no matter which angle you come at, you get something good. All right, now time to get that gazpacho out of the fridge. Oh, there's that gazpacho, nicely chilled. It actually takes on a more complex smell as those flavors really meld as it sits in the fridge. Oh, all right, now to try a little bit of soup, make a little plate of cheese and bread. Oh, that looks good. Now to top off the gazpacho, a little drizzle of your best olive oil. Oh, yes, just like that. Now I have two types of olive oil. I have the olive oil that I use like this just for garnishing a chilled soup or using in a salad. Then I have my cooking oil. So this is time to bring out the good stuff. A few of the croutons. I like the croutons. I love it when they soak up that soup. So a few extra. All right, now to make a little cheese plate. Oh, don't mind if I do. Definitely one of these filled peppers. A little bit of Serrano ham. I said a little, I took a bit more than a little. I really like having the Serrano ham with such a simple vegetable soup because it really makes the meal feel more substantial. A little membrillo, a few almonds. Oh, perfect. Only thing missing is a little bit of wine. Don't worry, I have some. And for this, it's a kind of a fun casual meal. I love serving a rosé. I know rosés have gotten very popular over the past few years and I'm all for it. This is a pretty dry rosé. All right, time to taste. Favorite all-time soup. Oh, the crunch of the crouton, the flavor of the soup, and it's good and cold, which is great for a hot day. Look at this. This is gonna be quite the bite. A little manchego, a little quince paste, a little Serrano ham on top. Oh, Oh, the sweetness of that quince paste with the little sharp flavor of the manchego and the richness of the ham. I love this combination of flavors, and it is so good if it's a ripping hot day. Now I'm going to show you how to make a chilled lemon souffle, which is a great dessert in the hot summer months, again, because it's cold, but also it has this lemony punch of flavor, but it's very light on the palate. All right, now to make these chilled lemon soufflés, you're gonna need some ramekins, or you could use a big souffle dish and make it family size, but I like the little ramekins because everyone gets their own. And if you noticed, I zhuzhed these up a bit with a little popped foil collar. That's because these set up in the fridge, not the oven. And so if you let them set with the collar on, you take the collar off before serving, and it looks like the souffle is risen above the rim. Totally fanciful, you don't need to do that. In fact, if you don't, you get an extra ramekin or two of souffle. So it's up to you, but I think it looks cool. All right, so setting those aside, we're gonna get into making a lemon pastry cream. So this dessert has three components. It has a lemon pastry cream, and then you lighten it with egg whites, and then you lighten it again with whipped cream, and that is what makes the souffle mixture. So here I have half a cup of fresh lemon juice, and I'm gonna thicken it with a packet of gelatin, because that's, of course, how it'll set up in the fridge. So just sprinkle the gelatin over the top. Now, over the years, we have recipes where you just sprinkle it over the top of the liquid and you let it sit there. I've found I love whisking it in, just hydrates more easily, because with gelatin you want to hydrate it and then you want to melt it. So let this sit aside till it's nice and hydrated. All right, onto the pastry cream part. Okay, in a medium saucepan, we're going to add a cup of milk and half a cup of sugar. Whisk this together. We're going to heat this up on the stove top over medium-low heat. We just want that sugar to dissolve and the milk to get good and hot. That takes a few minutes. Okay, and while that is heating up, we're going to whisk the egg yolk. Now, pastry cream is traditionally thickened with a ton of egg yolks, but because this is a refrigerated dessert and we're going to rely on the gelatin to help let the souffle set, we just need a few for richness. So that's 2 yolks. We're going to whisk it together with 2 tablespoons of sugar and a little bit of cornstarch, just 1/4 teaspoon. That's just a little insurance that the pastry cream will set up. Now I'm calling it a pastry cream, and in reality it's not an actual pastry cream. It's gonna be much looser than that, but it's similar to a pastry cream. All right, now I'm just gonna sit here and whisk this until the milk is good and hot. All right, you can see what a difference a little whisking made. It's much lighter in color. It's grown a little bit in volume, and that's perfect. Time to check on the milk. All right, the milk is perfectly hot. You can see the steam and all that sugar has been dissolved. Now we're just gonna temper the egg yolks by slowly adding the milk, just slowly bringing them up to temperature. If you dumped it all in and whisked it, it just might cook the egg yolks too fast. So you wanna very slowly raise their temperature so they don't curdle. There we go. All right, back into the pot it goes. All right, back to the stove we go. Medium-low heat. All right, now we're gonna cook this for about 4 minutes. We're looking for the consistency of this mixture to thicken up a bit. It looks like heavy cream. And most importantly, it's gonna register 185 degrees on the instant read thermometer. This is the best way to tell when it's done. So I'm gonna whisk it constantly, take its temperature every so often. All right, there we have it, 185 degrees, that is perfect. All right, now we're just gonna run it through a strainer, get any bits of yolk that might have cooked while it was cooking on the stove. So you just don't want any texture of scrambled eggs in there. All right, I always love to see what the strainer catches. How good of a job did I do? That is a pretty clean strainer. That's an A+. Okay. Now is when we add the lemon flavoring. So here's 2½ teaspoons of grated lemon zest. And I grated that zest really finely using a rasp style grater, so it has a really delicate texture. And last but not least, this gelatin and the lemon juice. So this is all the lemon flavor. Goes in after you've cooked it while it's still warm. That dissolves the gelatin, but doesn't really cook out that bright lemon flavor. All right, so that is the egg yolk lemon juice mixture. Pastry cream, but not really a pastry cream. All right, and we want to super chill this before we fold in the whipped egg whites and the whipped cream. So I have a bowl of ice water here. We're just gonna set this in the bowl, leave it out on the counter while we start whipping the egg whites.
We'll get you right back to the video. Check out Cook's Country's newest book, The Complete Cook's Country TV Show Cookbook.
Over 16 seasons and more than 600 recipes are condensed into this cookbook, jam-packed with every recipe we feature on the show, plus stories, tips, and reviews.
Go on the road with Cook's Country and tour the U.S. through food. Get inspired by dishes from restaurants, regions, and chefs all over America.
All in this one convenient cookbook.
To order your copy of the Complete Cook's Country TV Show Cookbook, scan the QR code or visit cookscountry.com to continue your Cook's Country journey.
And now it's time to whisk the egg whites. So here I have 5 egg whites. Adding them right to a stand mixer just makes it easier. Whisking by hand, I did once in culinary school. It took me forever to get soft peaks. Never gonna do that again. All right, now I'm just adding a pinch of cream of tartar. That just helps ensure that we get nice, tall whipped egg whites. Then we're gonna use 2 speeds. I'm gonna start on medium, get them broken up, get them a little foamy, and then we're gonna crank it up to medium high and add a little bit of sugar. So starting on medium, takes about a minute. All right, you can see that those egg whites are getting a little foamy, and that's a good indication that it's time to crank it up to medium high. And now I'm gonna start to add 2 tablespoons of sugar. But I add the sugar slowly. Now we're just gonna continue to whip this until we get nice, soft, glossy peaks. And that can take a few minutes to a few more minutes, depending on your mixer. Okay, time to take a look. Oh, you can see, even as I raise the head of the mixer, we are there. So let me take this off and show you. All right, so let me show you what I mean by a soft peak. Oh, that's perfect. You can see the peak really bent around, and that's good. So it makes a peak, but it's a soft peak. All right, also nice and glossy. Time to incorporate the whipped egg whites right into this lemony custard. So to start, I'm gonna take about 1/3 of the egg whites. I'm just gonna whisk them into this custardy base, just again to help lighten it up, help temper it before we fold in the remaining egg whites. Oh, that looks good. All right, now I'm gonna add the remaining egg whites. Now folding. The idea of folding is that you keep as much of the whipped lightened texture of the egg whites as possible as you mix it into the base. Over the years, I've folded a lot of different ways. Pretty particular on what spatula I like to use to fold because I like a big wide spatula. In culinary school, I watched my French chef use his arm. It was a big batch. He used his whole arm to fold, which kind of grossed me out. But what I like doing now is I like using a whisk to fold. So what I do, put the whisk down through the middle, come up the sides, and then let the mixtures fall together through the tines. I just think this is a really easy way to mix the two together without losing too much air in those whipped egg whites. All right, this is looking pretty good. A few streaks are okay because we still have to fold in the whipped cream. So I can finish folding in the rest of the streaky bits of the whipped egg whites when we fold in the whipped cream. Now to make the whipped cream, we're gonna use the same mixing bowl. It's okay, you don't need to wash it. And that's 3/4 of a cup of heavy cream. Back onto the stand mixer it goes. Lock it in, medium high, again looking for soft peaks. All right, I'm seeing the whisk leave a few trails in the whipped cream. Time to check it. And actually, when it comes to whipping cream, I like to do the last little bit by hand because it can go over whipped so quickly. I actually just use the same beater and use my hand. Yep, there she goes. It happens so quickly. Plating it out, there's the peak, falls over, but holds itself sideways. That's good, that's a good soft peak. All right, now, I'm gonna gently fold in the whipped cream. Again, using a whisk to fold these ingredients together. Go down through the center, scrape up the side of the bowl, and then let everything fall through the tines. And then I'll spin the bowl with every whisk. Oh, that looks good and fluffy, and it smells so lemony. All right, give the bowl a quick scrape down. Make sure there's nothing on the edge or the bottom of the bowl that's not mixed in. Oh no, that looks perfect. All right. Now into the ramekins, the mixture goes. To do this, I just use a big spoon and I take my time. And again, we're going right over the lip of the ramekins into that foil collar so that they'll look nice and tall when we serve them. Smooth the tops out just a bit. They don't need to be perfectly smooth, but I like them to look like they rose as a unit, you know, when I take off those foil collars. There we have it. Okay, these are ready for the fridge. I'm not going to cover them in plastic wrap because obviously it would stick to the tops of the soufflés. And they need to stay in the fridge for at least an hour and a half to help them really set up. You can leave them in there for up to 6 hours, but much past that they get a little too rubbery. So 1.5 to 6 hours is ideal. So these soufflés have set up nicely in the fridge and it's time to unmold them. So I'm going to take off the foil collar. And here I've had the foil collar just attached with a little piece of tape. So peel it off. Oh, look at that. I know it's just a silly parlor trick to do those foil collars, but I just think it looks so cool. So it looks like I got a little excited when I was filling these, and there's a little schmutz on the outside of the ramekins. Easy to wipe off with a warm, damp towel before serving. All right, those look pretty good and clean. Now time to add a little bit of a garnish. They don't necessarily need it, but I always think it looks pretty. Today I'm going to use some raspberries. Blueberries also work, or blackberries, strawberries. Oh, 3 little in the middle. That rhymes. 3 little in the middle. Notice how I washed these berries. It's hard to wash raspberries without them turning to mush. And the trick is to fill a bowl of cold water, add the raspberries, bob them gently, then pull them out and let them sit on paper towels. That gets them clean and dry without letting them turn to mush, which is especially important if you're going to use them as garnish. All right, that looks good. Topped off with a little mint. In culinary school, we weren't allowed to do this on our platters. You weren't allowed to put, well, inedible garnish was the term. Like if you're not meant to eat it, it shouldn't be on the plate. And I agreed with that for many years until one day I realized how a little green really just looks good on food. So now I'm all in favor of a little garnish, especially little sprigs of mint on dessert. Plus, makes the room smell good. All right, there they are. Aren't those sweet looking? Great dessert for a hot summer day. Might as well taste one. Oh, you can see that texture. It's nice and firm. Oh, it is light as air and creamy, and then there's that nice lemon zing. It just kind of melts away in your mouth, leaving behind just sort of a sweet kiss of lemon. See you next time. If you're ready to take your cooking to the next level, head over to americastestkitchen.com and get a free trial of our ATK Essential membership. While you're there, you can sign up for our free email newsletters and download our app. So, what are you waiting for?